Mike Friedman is the president of Millennia Housing Capital. And so most of the people here in this room will rarely deal with him ever. Might not even know who he is. But Mike has been, I know, a great support to Frank. He's raised, in his time with Millennia, close to $400 million in capital for different investments. And when I was talking with Frank about it, because, Mike and I are go way back, so I don't know him that much. I know who he is. He knows who I am. But one of the most impressive things Frank said to me is that as he was going through the acquisition of this building across the street, and it was very touch and go a lot. Sometimes they didn't think it was going to happen, and sometimes it did, and just up to the end, it was real touch and go. He said, and this is a huge compliment to Mike, he said Mike was the best one that was right there with him through the whole thing. And Mike was always telling him, you can do this, this is how we're going to get it done, and he was right there with him the whole time. So you may not ever have to interact with him because you're in the trenches and he's in New York raising money. But he's a small businessman. He's run his own businesses. He's a very accomplished guy, and maybe one of the most positive guys you'll ever meet. And he's the kind of guy that he would do anything for anybody. And that's easy to say about a lot of people, but that's what kind of guy he is. So how about a hand for Mike Friedman, everybody?
Thanks, Greg, for those great words. And as I'm the last speaker of the day, I know Rita, who puts this on, said be very brief, so I will. I can speak for a long, long time, and sometimes I have to raise capital. And again, I'm Mike Friedman, the president of Millennia Housing Capital. Let's just start getting... Jason, help me here, buddy. Okay, so forget the music that I had planned. The one thing that Frank had said 3 or 4 times today that I want to reinforce is every trip I've gone with Frank Sanito, all he talks about are you. And I am privileged and fortunate to be addressing you guys. Why don't you give you guys self an applause, because you guys are the reason. And sometimes I get in friendly debates with Frank about, let's not talk all about these property managers and the ops specialists and these maintenance guys. These high-end, big, tough capital guys in New York, all they care about is their money and is it risk and how much we're going to pay them back. That's their bottom line. But Frank is relentless, and he's not apologetic to say the strength of this company is all about you guys. So you guys really, I'm really honored, and I've spoken, I'm 62 years old, and I've spoken since I've been 20 years old to public people, and this is probably one of the greatest honors I've had, to speak in front of the group that's made Millennia great. My job today in the next 10 or 15 minutes, because I've been around so long and I've been to so many conferences, is a lot of times I sit at great conferences and hear great people. Tony was great, Frank was great, all the sessions you're going to are great, but what happens is 2 or 3 days later you come back home and you forget, and you stop following through. So my job right now is to give you a few tips on how to maximize your conference experience, okay? First of all, I was an ex-college basketball coach, and one thing my old coach taught me was life and Millennia and this conference is not a spectator sport. It's a participant sport. So I see you guys and the people in New York are next to each other and yelling for their property, and the people in Tennessee are yelling for their property. Today, tomorrow, Friday, you need to socialize. You need to network. I know, again, I don't even know the total goals of this conference, but I know at every conference I've ever attended, it's about networking. I had a gentleman 2 hours ago come up to me. I think he thought I was important, and he said to me, "Hey, Mike, you know who I am?" I said, yeah, I know who he is. I really didn't remember him too well because I visited the properties with Frank. He said, "I want the responsibility to supervise 5 different properties. What do you think I should do?" And I said, what you should do is probably find, who's your vice president? He said, Rita. I said, find Rita on Thursday night on the boat and talk to her about it, okay? So, and I didn't tell you this story to get a laugh. I'm serious. If you're not meeting other people and learning, number one, Frank said you want to be the best. You can't be the best just in your little cubby holes in Memphis, Tennessee, and Lansing, Michigan. You have an opportunity the next 3 days to meet the great leaders of our company and people that do exactly what you do. One of the reasons I think they allowed me to speak to you is I am one of you. Tony was great. I mean, she's unbelievable. She's a public speaker, but she's not one of us. She doesn't work for Millennia. I do work for Millennia, and I know what we go through. And I know the stresses and how we push. So I can relate to you. But again, please participate and please make sure you shake hands and meet people that can help you out. You're going to maybe wanting to be working for them one day, or maybe they're going to be working for you. And this is your chance. You know, when you get back into the trenches, you're not going to have a chance to socialize and talk about the great conference. This is it. This is it. Okay? Also, what I learned, again, I was a college basketball coach in my 20s. I was a young guy, and I would go to these clinics, and I'd hear one coach say, you got to do man for man. And I'd write down notes, oh, I'm going to be a man for man coach. And the next guy would say, no, you got to do zone. I said, oh, man, maybe he's right. And then the third guy would say, match up, man for man and zone. So I realized you got to decide at this conference to pick out 1 or 2 or 3 things to learn. Because you are overwhelmed already. I mean, even from 12:30 to right now, I'm overwhelmed with the rock and roll, with Tony, with Frank, now with me, with the conferences, with all the things we're buying, with the new direction. I don't know how you keep track of it. I can't keep track of it. But you need to focus, and we'll talk about focus in a second, about 1 or 2 things that you can take from this conference. And I've always made a point to take 1 or 2 things, meet a few people, and that's helped me out in my career. So again, agenda really quickly. Secret of success is you. I'm going to talk about focus. I'm going to talk about why, not how and what. And it really affirms what Frank talked about in the mission. Attitude, passion, gratitude, and follow-up. Let me give you just a 30-second story about how I joined the company, because, again, I'm one of you, and I'm sure you all have your own stories. And if we had about 25 hours, I'd bring everyone up, and you can tell your story. But I think my story is somewhat maybe common, but a little unique. I met Frank about 3 years ago. We'll make a long story short. He offered me the job. I was in Florida working. I've been traveling for the last 20 years. I live in Cleveland. And Frank offered me the job, and I called my wife. I've been married 34 years, and she's my partner. And I called her and said, hey, I got great news, I got good news, and I got average news. She goes, okay, what is it? Great news is I've just been offered a job to work for one of the great companies in the country. It's going to be unbelievable. We're going to have a great run. She said, wow, congratulations. What's the good news? The good news is it's Cleveland-based. I don't have to travel as much. She goes, oh, that's great. What's the average news? The average news is I'm going to have to take a pay cut. And so, just like you guys, she was silent on the phone, okay? And then she said the next thing that maybe your spouse or loved ones would say, how much of a pay cut? And I'm usually not very bashful. I'm pretty aggressive, but I was a little shy to tell her what the pay cut was. So finally, I got enough nerve. About a half a minute later, I said, well, I'm going to probably be making this for this year. Can you live on that? And again, silence. Seemed like a day, but it was about 10 seconds. And she said, yes. I said, cool. She said, but what are you going to live on? So when Frank talked about passion and commitment, everybody in this room has that. You need that passion, but you need that commitment, because we've all made those kind of sacrifices. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about focus for a second. And I actually, you guys have done a heck of a job, because I don't see a lot of cell phones, I don't see a lot of iPads, I don't see a lot of earphones, but I speak a lot and I travel a lot. And we all know that this is call it a multitask world. I'm going to change your thoughts about it, and I can prove it biologically. And now you cannot multitask. And you're going to say, what? What's this guy talking about? You cannot multitask. You can't text and drive. You can't talk and concentrate. You might think you can. Hey, I got 2 cell phones. I come in with 2 phones like that in my ear. My wife thinks I'm out of my mind. So I still try, but it's impossible. So I beg you this 2-3 days during all the speeches, during all your conference lectures, try to stay in the moment and not multitask, okay? We have an expression. If you chase 2 rabbits, you don't catch any. You can't chase 2 rabbits. Chase 1 rabbit for this conference to maximize, okay? Let's talk. So you can read that and take about 10 seconds. That's right out of the journals, and it's not my opinion. Again, it is impossible to multitask. I think we started hearing this word 40 years ago when they called the super mom, the mom who worked, the mom who take care of the children, and they are. All the moms are super moms that do that. But in the business world, you can't be effective multitasking, especially if you're trying to learn new things, okay? And my IQ is pretty low, so I'm trying not to do too much multitasking. Okay, I didn't know Frank. I didn't see Frank's speech, and I was supposed to send me I was supposed to send Frank the PowerPoint, but it was too big, and I'm not very good in technology, so I don't know how to send big files. So again, this is something that I talk about to the investors all the time. And in fact, I actually memorized it. And it's the mission, and it's the why. And let's talk about that for a second, okay? Let's talk about the why, and then I'm going to show you about a 45-second video on the most watched TED Talk in the history of the TED Talks. But everybody knows what we do. We're a development company. We're a real estate company. We specialize in affordable real estate. We want to enrich the residents' life. Everybody knows what we do. And everybody kind of knows how we do it. And you guys know that. But the big question you got to ask yourself is, why do you do it? Why do you do it? Why do you get up in the morning? What is your passion? Okay? And once you discover the why, and I suspect most of you have the why. Frank told you, and I'm glad he said it because I was going to say it. If you don't love your residents, you shouldn't be here. If you don't have that why, that you get up every morning and think about how you're going to enrich the lives of your residents, you shouldn't be here. Now, that's kind of talking in 2 sides of our mouth because Frank talked about retention, and now some guy up here who's not in charge with human resources telling you, get out if you don't have that, right? So I know, but okay, let's watch this.
Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example.
I would encourage you to get on the YouTube when you come home and you get some time, because you're going to be focusing. You can't do it now, right? But get on there and see that 7-minute video. It's so powerful. Okay. I can't help myself because I'm a coach and I'm a motivator and I'm a teacher, that every time I get in front of people, I got to talk about what's the most important thing, and it's attitude. And even though that's not my topic today, it's maximizing your conference experience, I think attitude is directly related to that. And every year I get older, I've been working since I've been 16 years old, I'm 62, every year attitude becomes more important to me. And it becomes more important in my perspective of why people are successful. So again, those are the benefits of a positive attitude. And here's the coolest thing of all. You can't control how much Millennia is going to pay you. You really can't. You can create more value and ask for a raise, or maybe they'll give you a raise, but you can't control it. There's very little things we have under control. That we have under control. You can create and dictate a positive attitude. And all that means is whatever happens to you, that's how you respond. He said the word, so I guess I'm going to say it too. Shit happens, okay? It's how you respond to that is what's going to determine success. I was always told public speaking, do not cuss, but since Frank said one time, I guess I can do it. Okay. This is what's called the 212 difference. And the two companies that I used to run, our company motto was 212. And again, you'll learn it really quickly. At 211, water doesn't do anything special. At 212, it boils. 1 degree difference, and it can move trains. Take a look at this for about a minute. So, again, very simple, small things. 1 degree, you saw the difference. I want to conclude now with everybody who thinks, how many times have you heard the word knowledge is power? Raise your hand. And keep your hands up if you believe knowledge is power. Wrong. Put your hands down. Okay? Don't follow me. Okay? Knowledge is information. What you learned today is information. What Tony told you about her sugar thing, pretty cool, I think. It's information. Power is the ability to take action. I want to say that one more time. Knowledge isn't power, and you see that on the signs, and you see it in the schoolyards, and you read it, and just say, you know better now. Mike Friedman told you it's not. Knowledge is not power. Power is the ability to take action on new ideas, on knowledge, okay? I'm going to end this with one thing. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. Two things. I told you, Rita, I could go a little longer, and Frank said I could. Follow-through is more important than the initial presentation. And trust me when I tell you, I make many, many presentations. And you do similar in your work. You're always doing presentations. You're always selling something. If you're not selling your residents that it's a good place, they're selling you it's a bad place. We're always selling. But selling is not so hard. Follow-through is difficult. So what you learned from me today is not very much. What you heard from Frank, what you heard from Tony, what all the great teachers and the REACT courses and all the stuff you're going to these seminars for, if you don't follow through back there, I got to tell you something, and I know Frank won't like to hear this. It's a waste of time and a waste of all of our money that we're putting into this thing. You need to follow through. And again, focus this week to maximize it. Let me do one interactive thing with you. Stuff I do. So this is a focusing exercise. And all I want you to do, hopefully you can all see me, is clap your hands when I clap my hands. You ready? Here we go. Ready? So, again, I didn't say it's easy. I said you got to focus. Here we go. Okay? Again, focus. It's important. Here we go. Now you got it. Now you got it. Don't listen to my voice. Just watch my hands. Okay. Come on. The group's better. Here we go. We're working too hard down in the south here. Here we go. Good. Good. All right. Joey, congratulations. Thanks for building this company up, and good luck to you, okay?